So
Oh
like just
yeah.
pure frustration, anger of like, we're sitting on our butts here. And I have good friends who are calling me and saying, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And it's like everything inside me is saying, like I imagine with you guys, like when you hear the call of your friends,
Fuck
there's
yeah.
nothing worse than being told, stand down, and we're waiting till we get all of our gear and our weapons and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, screw that, like there are people dying and I don't give a crap about the protocols, right? And here's what happened. If we would have done what some guys did do and did go and become cowboys, right? Right now they're facing charges for killing terrorists.
Battle Line Podcast. This is a really great episode, and I don't just say that. I probably do say that just about every episode, and I genuinely do feel that way. But this is the first person we've had who's active duty IDF, and he doesn't hold anything back. I can tell you that.
No, he shouldn't. Why should he? Anybody that's stood at the front line and has faced the enemy, faced and seen combat, their opinions matter to me when it comes to talking about combat and talking about fighting terrorism. If you stood against terrorism, if you haven't, you may have a great opinion, but it doesn't hold a lot of water because it is different when you're face to face with the enemy and you've seen death and you've seen atrocities and you've experienced them or even been a part of them where you've had to stop an atrocity. So I love his opinion. I love what he's talking about. I love what he says because it hit home to me and he's right a lot of it. So I'm so happy we got him on. It's an awesome episode.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that we have listeners that are from all different backgrounds that we could kind of grab. And that's why I always say there's no like shortage of guests that we could get on.
Yeah.
And I do sometimes forget to say there's always new people checking out this show. So, I mean, if you are one of those new people, subscribe wherever you're listening on YouTube. By the time this goes up, we'll be at 6,000 subscribers because we're just about there, right on the cusp of it. So, yeah, we've been getting bigger on YouTube. Every now and again, we have a video that just really shoots up in that algorithm and gets us new people. And you see it all the time. People who are like, I didn't know that you had a podcast 5 years later. But it happens. I mean, because that way they're just browsing YouTube and they come across our stuff. But with that, man, Ned has been with us for such a long time. And the thing I have to say, so many people take supplements for their health, for their workouts and stuff like that. But are you taking a supplement for your brain function, for your brain health? And that's where their brain blend comes in. That is fantastic. It's also a blend of CBD and then also all those botanicals that are going to help your memory, your cognitive function. And truthfully, doing a show like this, you have to be quick on your feet, and taking that has helped me tremendously. Also, their relief balm, which is a mix of the menthol and CBD, that's tremendous as well. Or just their daily blend of CBD. So check it all out, or their mellow magnesium. So many products that we really stand behind. And that's all at helloned.com/battleline, or just enter the code battleline at checkout. That's HELLONED.com/battleline. Go there now. You'll get a great discount as a first-time customer through the Battleline podcast. And with that, let's get right to this.
From Kansas City to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Switch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battle Line Podcast.
The Switch is on Battle Line Podcast. We're actually really excited to have our first active duty IDF guy, because we've had on Dan
Yeah.
Gordon, who's really more known as a film writer. You know, he did The Hurricane with Denzel Washington and all that, but you're the first guy we've had on who's in the fight right now. And you know what? I've watched your stuff. I know you've watched our stuff because we've been connected for a long time, but I am gonna I don't want you to tell me. I'm gonna attempt to say your name, because all those years of Hebrew school, which I was absolutely awful at, I was one of those people who's bar mitzvahed and the cantor was like whispering to me what to say because I couldn't seem to do it. So is it Doron Keidar?
Doron Keidar. So try to roll your R's more like Spanish.
Doron
Yeah.
Keidar.
Doron Keidar.
There you go.
But I really
That's
Spanish.
closer.
I really Spanished that up though. That was super.
You
that
did.
was
So,
more Mexican than Hebrew. That was more Spanish.
Yeah, because Hebrew's got but so
Yeah.
so Americanized be Doron, really, right?
Doran, Kadar, yeah.
Well,
Dorian,
actually,
I've been called all kinds of things.
it would be an interesting thing to start with your origin story, because I don't even
Yeah.
know where that's all from, because clearly people listening to you, you're not originally Israeli. I see the Texas license plate. Like, is that
right.
where you grew up, or?
No. So I'm a little offended because you just said I'm not originally from here. So I'm actually very much indigenous to the land of Israel, born and raised.
Really?
Yes, sir.
I just figured
Born-
no accent, you know?
Yeah. I offended a second time there, making fun of my accent. All joking aside. So yeah, this is very disarming for a lot of people that listen to me, because, they see my content online and what have you. And I try to communicate as an Israeli to an American speaking audience. And notice I didn't say English speaking audience, because that's an insult to the British or any English around the world. Scottish and Australian, etc. They speak actual English. So what I speak is an American version of the English language. My parents were American. My father was a World War II veteran. He was a Christian Zionist. And he, at the age of 15, lied about his age and joined the naval units and was in the first submarine units in combat, because I believe that's the first time that submarines were used in combat, other than the Confederates that used that tin can thing, and it didn't really submerge all the way, right? Yeah. So for some of your war historian sticklers out there, hopefully I nailed that. And so, yeah, so he lied about his age. He was 15 years old, started his service in the Navy because of his good friends he grew up with in Washington, D.C., wrote him all these postcards about, hey, Jack, come to the front lines here where it's great, and I think they were lying to him. And so he came, but he did, but again, like I said, he started his service and lied about his age because of something that was planted in his mind as a young child from his father, who was a boxer, or he sparred with the heavyweights in the 1920s. And he was actually a barber. So he was like your man's man that, did men's grooming as his day job. And then his side job was sparring with the heavyweights of the early 20s. And so he told my dad once, when he was a young kid, he saw him all beat up. He said, hey, what happened? And he says, oh, don't worry. I beat the guy. It's all good. He's like, okay, I get you. That's awesome. So you won the fight. Who is the kid? Oh, it's the rabbi's kid down the street. And so then his dad stops him in his tracks right there and says, that's God's chosen people. Don't you ever raise your finger on God's chosen people. And so that's like the little bit I know from my dad's background as to the why, what motivated him. And as a young man, when he found out finally years into the atrocities of what Germany was doing, many Americans didn't know for many years. It was withheld from the public. But when he found out about that, he's like, that's it. I'm joining. I'm going to fight in this, and I'm going to fight against the Nazis and defend God's chosen people. And that's what I grew up with, is that kind of a Christian Zionism in a Jewish Middle Eastern culture surrounded by Arab Jews from Morocco, from Tunis, Iraq, etc. And I was the white kid, and asked me how it feels to have white privilege. I'll tell you all about it. got my butt handed to me on the daily because I was the only odd kid, so to speak. I stuck out, right? Because of the color of my skin and knowing that I'm the kid of the Americans, right? In a very small town in the northern part of Israel, which today is it was back then too, but it's bordering Lebanon, and today it's at the very forefront of the war that we've started here in October 7th. They started in October 8th with bombarding the north with rockets, and till now still the north is heavily hit with rocket fire, and a couple actually just got killed by one of those rockets. And I have friends of mine, good friends of mine, who live on the Golan Heights that knew the couple. So yeah, so that's where I grew up. That was, what brought us here was my father, and his Zionism, his desire to help the Jewish state, the Jewish people, and so on. And it all started as a young boy.
If it's cool, before we get into, because we'll get into October 7th and all that, of
Yeah.
course, but
Sure.
I mean, you are a long-time veteran. You joined the IDF in 2003. So yeah, I'd love
Yeah.
to get into how all of that started and up to now,
Yeah.
because there's a break in between there.
Yeah. So I'm a 1999 recruitment year. So that was the year I should have recruited. I ended up getting engaged instead. My mother had just passed away, and my father had been in a special old folks home in the United States because he was a recovering alcoholic.
Sure.
And so he needed to be heavily medicated and so on and so forth. It's kind of like a long story, but I'm jumping to the to the end of it, so to speak. Ended up in foster care, all that. You mentioned Denzel Washington. So my foster father was the one that actually founded Denzel Washington. He was the professor of the Fordham University of the Performing Arts, and he was the one that basically told Denzel Washington, "Hey, you got some talent." And he's the one that basically, yeah.
That's a wild connection. Okay.
Yeah. So, but never met the guy myself. Even when he visited Israel, I think back in like 08 or something, it made the media, and because he came for like a very short trip and without announcing, like a lot of celebrities, they make their announcement of, and then they, different media will want to meet with them or whatever, get you know what I mean? Anybody who's been famous, they understand the gig. And so he didn't do that, broke protocol, if you will, came with his family for just a quick, I think like a connection to his, Christian roots and that kind of thing. And just to see the Holy Land and with his children and all that and family. And so the Israeli media, which is horrible when it comes to paparazzi, like they're pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
And so they're just like, tried to, get something out of him, a scoop. And he goes, "Oh, I'm just here to see the Holy Land, and my good friend David Davis." They're like, "David Davis? Wait, we have a celebrity here and we don't know this guy?" And so it's actually a fun story. I'll actually get into that. This is kind of funny, actually, because so our Jay Leno, the Israeli Jay Leno, his name is Guy Penis. Yeah. So my foster dad, David Davis, he's a former U.S. Marine, real hardcore kind of dude, and just a very serious kind of guy. Also a professor, so he's very intellectual, very smart. And he gets a call from a guy who says, "Hi, this is Guy Penis, blah blah." And he goes, "Okay, yeah." He comes to hang up on him. He goes, "No, no, 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 no." It's his very Israeli thing to say, "No, no, no, no," and keep up. No, 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 no. Keep it going for a little bit more. And then he goes, "This is who I am. I'm the Saturday Night Live version of the Israeli. I'm actually really famous." And he doesn't have a television, by the way. He has no clue who's a celebrity, who's cool in Israel. He has no clue. And he goes, "Okay, what do you want?" And he says, "Well, I understand that you know Denzel Washington." And he goes, "Yeah, he was at the university where I taught." Okay, like he's trying to get a scoop. And he goes, "Hey, you want a scoop? Denzel Washington, he's famous. Go talk to him. I'm nobody." And so that was just the thing. He never got interviewed because the guy got shot down. And the only thing that got published was a article by a local newspaper in Haifa, which is where the couple lived. And I used to live with them back then, or sorry, not in 2008, but when I grew up with them, we were living in Haifa. So this is on also towards the north. It's coastal. It looks like San Francisco, basically. It's a like a port city. And yes, they got the scoop, right? The whole story of why he ended up in Israel. He ended up actually having a supernatural uh, encounter with God, basically, right? So he was an alcoholic. His life was, miserable. He had all these Tony Awards and you name it, models that he'd be sleeping with, alcohol, because drugs, the whole deal. But he was miserable, right? And so he was searching for God basically and didn't really know it. And one of his students says, "Hey, David, I think you need help." And so they took him to a meeting in New York City where they had these actors and dancers and all these performing arts crowd that would meet, and they actually had like a revival. And so he goes to the meeting, God hits him, he has a real encounter with God, changes his life. He leaves all of that. He ends up going to Times Square Church with David Wilkerson. For the Christian audience who's listening might know some of these names. Very well known evangelical preacher. And I think it's his brother, or together with David Wilkerson, started what's known as Teen Challenge. And that's a drug alcohol rehab that's one of the most successful in the world. And so they have that ministry. And David Davis, who, like I said, he got his whole life turned around. He visits Israel with his wife, who's Jewish. So he goes to Israel. They do this Roots tour thing, and then they discovered that there's drugs in the old city, which kind of like blew their mind. Oh, what? In the holy city of Jerusalem, there's drugs? Like, yeah, because the Arab family that they stayed with, the Christian Arabs, were the ones that kind of opened their eyes to it. And they're like, wow, this is crazy. And they said, well, would you come and do something about this, David, right? Like, you're the professional, aren't you? And he's like, I don't know anything about that stuff. I just happen to know the church and the ministry that has that, but it's not my thing. But it became his thing. And so he and his wife came to Israel, and they started drug and alcohol rehab, known as House of Victory, up in Haifa. And so he left Hollywood. He left all of that. He left his tenure at Fordham, everything, in order to pursue fighting drugs and alcohol here in Israel. And that's how I ended up with them in their family, my brother and I, because my father became an alcoholic, became abusive. My mother had mental problems. And so my family was falling apart. And friends of friends said, hey, would you take in these two kids? I was 13, my brother was 11. And that's how we ended up in foster care with this very smart people, like my English, like that's why I laughed about the English, because my English was horrible. He was the one
Really?
that
Wow.
correcting me. He's like, udders is what's on a cow. You mean those other people? I'm like, yeah, those other people, And so yeah, that's how I ended up basically into foster care with some really cool people, and got exposed to a lot of really interesting realities of,
Sure.
like one of the people that was there, for example, was a terrorist, right? In the rehab. So he's an Arab Muslim terrorist. He's terrified because this is there's Jews here and these Christians and whatever. And he's just like, are the Jews going to try to kill me? I remember him telling me that, because he's all like shaking. And I was like, this guy's a terrorist? Like, you're joking, right? As a teenager, like that guy's not a terrorist, like. And but in any case, so got some very fun, interesting exposure to just a different dynamic of Israeli culture that you normally wouldn't. And it's part of kind of what made me who I am today. And
So then let's get to like 03 enlist, not
Yeah, sorry.
enlisting, being
Well, actually,
drafted, of course.
Sorry, I kind of yeah.
I have a dumb question. How did
Yeah.
how did an alcoholic terrorist get to the I mean, did he just knock on knock on
family,
the door
yeah.
and
Yeah, it's a
his
good
family
question.
his
Yeah.
family said, hey, take off that vest. You don't need to kill anybody today. Go ahead
Yeah.
and go get cleared. So when you come
That's a
back
good
to
question.
work
Yeah,
as
you're right.
as a terrorist, you can put your stuff back on and be sober.
So-
That's I mean, I could have had some great
It
conversations
is crazy. Yeah.
with this guy, dude. But yeah, all jokes aside. Well, no, not
Well,
all
you know
jokes
what?
aside. But yeah, go ahead.
It
I'm
is
sorry.
funny. It is funny. You're right. It is funny. And like I said, it gave me an insight into the humanity behind some of these scumbags of humanity, right?
Yeah.
That even though these people are dangerous, do horrible things, at the end of the day, they're humans. They have weaknesses. They have fears.
Yeah.
You know, they have a worldview that you're not aware of. Like for example, I had no, like, why is he afraid of Israelis? That's what I thought. Like, why is he afraid of us? You're the ones who do terror attacks on us. Why would you be afraid of me? And of course, you find that out later as a soldier and a security expert and so on. You learn that this is what they teach these people as propaganda, and that's why he's afraid of you, not because you are a threat to him or his family and so on. But another funny story about that, talking about these guys, when we ended up in foster care, my father was in a alcohol rehab here, my mother at the mental institute, and the house is vacant. So neighbors, and you know, that knew my family took advantage of the situation. They hired in help to come and raid my house, basically. And so this Jewish woman who my dad, and I know her, and I went to school with her daughter, and she would beg my dad for money all the time, especially for Sabbath. You know, I don't have money for challah and tirosh, and for any of the Jews out there, you know, I'm talking about, for the rest of y'all, that's what we have for Sabbath dinner, is the bread and the fake wine. And in some cases, you also have what's called it's a special kind of wine that you have the blessing for. It has to be 100% grape juice. Any case, I won't get into Jewish halakha, but because I'm using some terms that are Hebrew and people are like, what? And so like stuff like that, basic, like you know, the celebration foods. And like, I don't have money for that. My dad would give her a ridiculous amount of money, because my dad was very wealthy and as an electrical engineer, and was one of those that built Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and so on. And
Wow.
So these people took advantage of him. And so when we were gone, she raided our house with Arab thugs from East Jerusalem. So we know that our house was broken into and a bunch of things were stolen and all that. I find that out while I'm in foster care, right? And I'm like, well, you know, it's stuff, you know, whatever, you know, stuff, right? You know, big deal. So they took TV, this, that. I don't need that stuff. You know, I have a home here. I have a family here. Who cares? I take Arab lessons from one of the drug addicts from East Jerusalem. This guy is not a thug. He's not like or not a terrorist. Sorry, he's not a terrorist, but he's a thug, right? So because he stole for drugs and so on. And his name was Maroon. So if Maroon is listening, he's my brother, awesome guy. And so Maroon, it's a funny name in English, I know, but that's his name. So he sits down teaching me Arabic, because I hated Arabs, by the way, growing up with neighboring Lebanon and having terrorists cross into my town of Kiryat Shmona, killing Jews, doing killing sprees. I was attacked by rocks being thrown at me and my brother. My brother got swapped in the head with one of those rocks. And let's just say, you know, like they almost killed us. So let's just say I wasn't very happy about learning Arabic. And so here, this guy that, you know, is like my friend. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe Maroon can teach you Arabic. So we're sitting there learning Arabic, and Maroon tells me about his background. I said, tell me about yourself a little bit. Like, how'd you end up as a drug addict? And so he tells me a little bit, and he says, yeah. He says, wait, didn't you say you're from Kiryat Shmona? He's like, I was there once. I said, what in the world would you be doing there? So Jerusalem and Kiryat Shmona, just to give people some context, Jerusalem is the center of the country. Arabs don't necessarily go far from their town and their communities. They kind of stay local a little bit. They're not really explorative, if you will, right? And so I'm thinking, why would you be going all the way up north? And there's nothing to be found up there for Arabs, okay? Because it's a mostly Jewish area. There's all this conflict. You know, people understand Jerusalem and the whole mix there. That works, but like for this dude to go up there where there's very few Arabs, not so much. And so he goes, oh yeah, there was this Jewish lady that hired us. And I said, really? For what? Oh, there was this, you know, she said that this family stole her stuff and whatever. And, you know, we were going to steal it back for her and she would pay us for it. So, you know, we're all cool with that. I said, no joke. I said, really? Well, tell me where you went. I know Kiryat Shmona like the back of my hand. So he starts describing the house, the this, the that, the picture. He goes, there's this weird thing. There's this picture of this blonde girl. I said, yeah, that's my sister. So my dad, in his first marriage, he had my sister who, you know, there's about a 40+ year gap between us. And I go, that's my sister. He goes, no, 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 no. He looks at me like, no, no, no.
No,
I said,
no.
and then I finish it for him. Turn right here. There's this on that wall. There's that. And he goes, and his eyes get real big. And he's like, oh my God. He goes, Doron, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'll pay you back everything. Da, da, da. I said, brother, it's all good. It's all good. It's in the past. Water under the bridge, man. Like, you're good. And he's like really insisting and wanting to pay me back for what he did. And so any case,
so wild, just childhood. Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah. So all that to say that brings me to the why I ended up leaving Israel when I should have done my service. So because I grew up to two Christian parents, my mom was Catholic, my dad was Protestant. I didn't have to serve, but I had a recruitment date. I went to my first. There's a thing where you go in when you're like 15, and they do like a medical check on you. They do all this stuff, and they do like a bunch of tests, and basically to process where you're going to end up: combat, mechanic,
Sure.
making coffee for generals, whatever. Sprinkler guy.
You gotta have it. You gotta have your support guys. Come on.
Exactly.
You gotta have it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, no dissing on those guys, but that's what it leads to, right? Is essentially where you're going to get placed in the military. So I get labeled as combat, which is very hard to get out of. If you get in a, label as combat, they don't want to let go of you real quick. And so too bad you're already in the system. And I'm like, well, listen, my mom just passed away. I'm getting married and I'm planning to go to the United States and be with my dad before he dies. He's really old and he's fragile and all this stuff. And I want to do my last respects for my father. Give me 1 year. They say no, Israel bureaucracy. I get a lawyer. The lawyer knows about the history of the Sinai agreement. And he goes, oh yeah, your dad was one of the American contractors that did that. I said, yeah. He goes, oh, I know the whole story. He turns out to be this total like history buff. And he goes, easy. And he writes up this letter, real fancy way, legal talk, whatever. And he's like, these kids don't owe you jack. And so then I get full release from military duty and service. And I'm a free agent, so to speak. Go to the States, go to Bible school to study Christian theology. And this is back in March of 2000. So March of 2000, I'm in Bible school in Pensacola, Florida, living just a few meters away from the Blue Angels.
Oh, wow.
And so those suckers woke me up every morning.
That's pretty cool, though.
So if there are any Blue Angel pilots listening to this, God bless you. And I had a Marine living upstairs to me with that Marine cut, and he was this young guy and total like quintessential Marine, and married to this young girl, and they got
she was a stripper.
pretty rowdy. She wasn't.
That's
the thing.
bullshit. Marine and Pensacola, dude. She was a stripper.
You're funny.
Dude.
Well, that's the thing. They got married before they came to Pensacola. She is this really sweet girl from Utah, I believe it was, and she was a Mormon.
Oh no!
And,
wow,
total random. Yeah. Real sweet young girl.
Yeah, my first wife was Mormon. She was from Utah as well. I mean, they're kind of. I mean, I don't want my first wife might be. No, she doesn't. She was a stripper for me. I mean,
that's awesome.
No, she was awesome. I love her. She's listening. I'm so sorry, Steve. I'm just kidding. You're awesome. She's an incredible woman. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And so it's just kind of funny, right? Here I am trying to go to this Bible school, and it's all about purity and God and all this, and like upstairs, like my neighbors, I mean, they're just going at it morning, afternoon, evening. And I'm just like, oh my, and they would wrestle. They do this thing where they'd wrestle. And I'm like, do I go up there and because I'm like, when does it go from wrestling to hanky panky? And it's like, dang, it's just very, and here's the other funny thing.
That's Utah Mormon women, man. I told you. Okay. All right,
so,
there.
yeah. And so then my neighbor knocks on the door one day, my new neighbor, and he goes, do you know how to, do you know how to, and I go, you mean the smoke alarm? Yeah, this thing. I go, sure. I'll be right with you. So I go to this guy's house. And the smoke alarm is, going crazy. And it's like, you have a ladder? He goes, no, like they don't have anything. I said, okay, give me that stool over there. And I go, look, like, see, take battery out. There you go, brother. Good to go. And he goes, wow, thank you. I said, you know, you probably shouldn't be cooking like this with this thing up here, you know? It basically turns out it's Kuwaiti guys learning to be pilots at the base there from Kuwait. And I'm like, because I asked us, so where are you from? I'm like, clearly, I'm like, okay, this guy's Middle Eastern. The accent, the look, the food, I smell it. I'm like, you're Middle Eastern. So where are you from? Oh, I'm from Kuwait. And I was like, do I tell them where I'm from? And I'm like, oh God, you know, because I don't know if anybody knows, but I lived through the Gulf War and the whole like Kuwait, Iraq
Yeah.
triangle there. Fun history. So
Is
that was, yeah.
Is it wrong that my head right went when you said that to the 9/11 pilots that flew?
I was thinking that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was
exactly.
like, I thought that's
exactly.
I thought that's where you were going. It's like, holy
I
shit,
wasn't.
no
I
way.
wasn't. I wasn't. But you know what? It really ticked me off because when 9/11 happened, because let me put it like this: I grew up here in Israel through, like I said, northern Israel. I grew up under rocket attack.
Yeah.
Terrorists crossed the border, like what happened on October 7th, and went on killing sprees, throwing children off of multi complex stories out the windows from like the 4th story or whatever, right? Crazy stuff like that. And I lived through the Gulf War. All the kids were taken out from Kiryat Shmona during the Gulf War, sent to Eilat, to the like our equivalent to, what is it, like Vegas?
Gotcha.
But it's on the beach, right? On the Red Sea there. So they're all having vacation time. My brother and I, we're living through rocket attack after rocket attack. And for us, it's like, you know, like cool, right? You know, we look out the window, we're trying to see the hits of the Scuds. We're not in the bomb shelter. And what happens is my parents, because of their English, they didn't get the memo that they're evacuating all the kids out of the city. And so we lived through the Gulf War.
Yeah.
Friends of mine, their dad got killed on the spot by a rocket that hit him while he was taking a smoke break. Another kid that was my age, he was sleeping on the porch. He got up from the boom, and then a piece of shrapnel like decapitated him.
Damn.
You know, stuff like that you're just, you know, it's a very crazy. I mean, like, how do you explain that to people? You know, that this is your reality. Getting on buses and they were blowing up in the early 90s. We had the bus bombings. We had like friends of mine that went to high school with me. I'll never forget the Maxim restaurant bombing in Haifa that happened in what was that, like 90 high school 97, I think it was. And so she comes to school, one of my school friends from school, she comes back with her arm with like pins all through it because she had survived the bombing. You know, friends of mine that blew up in a bus, blew up in a, you know, just crazy stuff like that. That's your day-to-day reality. And then you're now in the United States, everything's calm, happy, everybody's, you know, whatever, safe. And then my neighbors, friends of mine called me and said, hey, Doron, you gotta go over here. You know, something crazy. I didn't have a TV. And I run over there, and then I get to see the second plane crash into the Twin Towers. And so everybody's like shocked, but I'm looking and I go, that's what those guys do. You know, I mean, in my mind, it was like terrorists. It wasn't like, who did this? Oh my God.
So wait,
who
now
did this?
I'm just wondering, as Chris said, so then the Kuwait, what was the background of the Kuwait guy?
What was his background? Oh, he just came
why
to
was he
learn.
there?
He's a Kuwait Air Force pilot.
Okay.
So
So
the
there's
government of
nothing
Kuwait, right?
nefarious. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Well, as far as we know, you know,
As far as we know, I mean, shit, who knows?
you know, people might not like my pure honesty on this, but it's like, you know what? I don't trust the Arab world, with all due respect. And anybody who's lived in this part of the world knows what I'm talking about. Arabs don't trust Arabs. Okay. A lot of the work that I do when I'm not now in the military is, I've never talked about this actually. But somewhat of what I do.
Don't get yourself in trouble.
No, it's fine. It just, I've decided not to talk about it, but I'm like, you know what, who cares? So basically I do undercover work with the police, where we do raids in the hardest neighborhoods in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, where the heaviest crime, terrorists, so gun seizures, like weapon seizures, drugs. So I see the worst of the worst of the Arab culture, okay, the Islamic Arab culture to be specific, because there's a huge difference between the Christian Arabs and the Muslim Arabs, and there's a huge difference between educated Muslim Arabs and non-educated Muslim Arabs, okay? And the non-educated ones are the ones who are thugs, okay? They usually end up in crime. They end up being told that everything's okay via Islam, and Islam, you know, teaches it's okay to be a deceiver, a liar, and all these bad things to the other, to the infidel, right? The non-Muslim. But then they end up doing it one to each other, you know? So I've seen the worst of what unfortunately, what the uneducated culture of Islam within an Arab culture, which is very violent. It's very, very, very animalistic, if you will. The one who carries the biggest stick, and legit, they carry sticks in their neighborhoods, like big sticks, to fight each other, to defend each other, to defend themselves from each other, from the other tribe, the other family, clan, etc. And it's just, again, like I said, some people might listen to what I'm saying and call me a racist and whatever. Well, you're welcome to stand in my shoes and tell me all about it. But go with me to some of these crummy neighborhoods and see if you're even got the kahunas to go through there.
Yeah,
I'd love to see you try. You know,
and I've seen that.
You'll feel the violence. You'll feel it.
Oh,
You don't have to experience it. You'll feel the violence.
Okay. When I was,
and you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. When I was working in Iraq and Afghanistan a lot, and then Yemen and Libya, you know, I have to, I agree with you. I say the exact same thing. When you say, though, non-educated, I say them as they're highly educated in the Quran, Islamists in Islamism in the Quran, getting an imam and knowing.
Some of them, though, right? Or because some of them, speaking of certain parts of the world, like are illiterate.
Well,
so,
but
I mean,
when Hekmatyar in Afghanistan, complete turd, just awful.
Yeah.
Extremely smart individual. Professor Saif, who died, you know, extreme, but in the ways of Islam and against the infidel, which
jihadist Islam. Yeah.
Thank you. And then when I say Islamist, I say jihadist. Same. That's what I'm saying. The same thing, bro. When I say Islamists, IST at the end.
I didn't hear the ST. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So can you clarify that, because you're in it. You're in it, man, and they are well educated.
So what you're talking about is the leaders. The leaders who lead and instigate, they know the Quran. The normal guy on the street, he doesn't know the Quran. I'll give you an example. You ask any Catholic about Catholicism, they can't tell you. But you have all these folks in America, right, or Europe or wherever. I'm a Catholic. But if I start asking you, what does it mean to be Catholic? Can you talk to me about Jesus? Can you talk about
because that was literally my grandpa. My grandpa would just always say I'm a good Catholic, but he knew nothing about the religion.
Thank you. So I think that's the best thing that Westerners can kind of relate to. But then you go to mass and you do your deed, you know, your service, if you will, to say, oh, I'm a good Catholic. I go to mass once a year or whatever, right?
But I say the difference is those people that you're speaking of are literate, and there's a huge amount of Islamic terrorists who can't even read.
Correct. So the Muslims here are different. They mostly are more literate because of Israel, because of the government Israel, because of the education system of Israel. They actually are literate. They are more educated, and they also speak Hebrew. So mind you, they speak not just Arabic, they also speak my language and can read and write Hebrew. Not all, but a good number of them, to hold Israeli jobs and so on, are very competent. But what I've learned, again, from the streets, from fighting crime with the Israeli police on the streets, as a volunteer, by the way, to be clear, I'm not a police officer. I'm a volunteer. I do volunteer work using special forces background experience to help them fight crime. What we see on the streets is that it's your normal thug is just like any thug anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And the reason behind their extremism and their hatred towards Jews and their jihadist worldview is because they're listening to a YouTube or some, you know, imam who is an extremist. And you know what? let me take it further, because your audience needs to understand how this works here, because this actually ties exactly into what we're up against here in Israel. October 7th isn't the first time we've dealt with this. This is just one of the symptoms. What's happening is that you have Islamic countries like Iran and Turkey, two completely different Islamic backgrounds. The Shiites of Iran and Turkey, who are, what are they? They're Sunni, I believe.
Are there Sunnis? Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think they're Sunnis, so they're different. But both have what would you say? Both have like a aspiration to be the Islamic superpower of the world.
Yeah. Okay.
To spread Islam in the world, but from two different kind of veins of Islam. And Turkey had an empire for nearly 500 years in Israel. So they want to go back to the golden age. So the one who has revived this idea of an Islamic jihadist worldview is Erdogan. So the president of Turkey of today, he's the one who is made Turkey an extreme nation, extreme Muslim nation, if you will, right? With extremist views, anti-Israel views. And he actually is directly behind land grabs in the old city of Jerusalem to exercise Islamic dominance and what's known as waqf control, Islamic control, land grab control in Jerusalem, in the capital of Israel in specific. So that's one of his main goals, right? The same with Iran. They do the exact same thing. If you notice, and folks, you just can Google this. Look at Iranian propaganda against Israel. Usually you'll see the picture of the Golden Mosque, which is the shrine. A lot of people think it's a mosque, but the Golden Dome in Jerusalem is, or the Dome of the Rock, the golden one, that's a shrine over the Holy Temple that used to stand in Jerusalem, the Jewish temples, both first and second temple. The black dome to the south of that is, it's kind of a dark gray, that's the mosque, which is known as the Al-Aqsa. So but normally for propaganda's sake, they actually use the shrine, typically in pictures, in footage of propaganda, in the homes of almost every Muslim that's an extremist will have a picture of the Golden Dome. Even if they're not extremists, they'll have it because it's part of that culture. It becomes like a fad, like you have on your like in your backdrop of your office there, right? You have sports team that you jersey and flags and all that. For them, it's that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And combined with the flag of Hamas, the flag of Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, etc., one of the terrorist entities. So those are all combined with the propaganda of anti-Israel, destroy Israel, and each one wants to be the one to say, the superpower of Iran, we did this, right? We are the ultimate expression of Islam in the world. We're the ones. Turkey's doing the same thing. So this is what we're up against. And so when the imams in the mosques that receive the propaganda speeches, they literally get printed speeches from either one of those entities.
Yeah.
So a lot of the extremists teaching and preaching that you'll hear, and you'll hear it on the Temple Mount, by the way, in Jerusalem, and at the Al-Aqsa that I just mentioned, up on the Temple Mount, that's where you'll hear this preaching against Israel. We'll destroy Israel. We'll this, we'll that, all of these Islamic extremist views from the Quran. And that is why you end up with terrorism. That's why you end up with illiterate or half literate, ignorant males. Usually it's males that go into terrorism. And then you end up with the exception of some females. And usually that's because she either got raped or she has a illness that no man will want her. And in order to gain honor for her family, if she carries out this terrorist attack, she regains honor in the culture and in the community and so on. So in the exceptions, in some exceptions, you end up with also some women, and some more exceptions of like a smaller percentage, you end up with some women who legit want to be a jihadist, but she doesn't really get anything out of it. Okay. She doesn't get the same promise as the dudes, 72 virgins and a river of wine.
There's no male versions. I thought there was
There's
male.
no-
No.
no,
Okay. I
no.
just want to make sure
well,
that
she gets to be one of those women for one of
that's
the
right. I heard that.
saints.
That's
Of,
I did hear that when I was working in Baghdad. Yeah, I remember
yeah, yeah,
because it was I there's nothing wrong. I made a joke. I was like,
Yeah.
that's because I asked the same thing, and the lady blew herself
Yeah.
up, so she's not getting 72. She gets to be a virgin. Oh well, okay.
Oh, yeah,
Makes
exactly.
sense. All right. Well, continue mission. No, and you are
Yeah.
spot on, bro. I remember
So,
first going into Iraq and seeing the Sunnis and Shiites fight each other because that's why Saddam was so control. People don't get it. It is.
Yeah.
It's like a fight
Yeah.
within itself for who's going to
correct.
be the most.
Correct.
It's Republicans versus Democrats, except they're not killing each
Correct.
other and blowing each other up. But it's still that a power
Yes.
struggle that will always be there. And you're right on the Turkey thing, man. I remember working in Kurdistan. I worked up there a lot with the Pesh, and we fund Turkey.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
we
I
let
didn't want to say that, but you.
no, we do. I was working with the agency. We were up there on the border, and I couldn't understand it because the
It's sad.
Kurds,
Yeah.
Kurds with the Assyrian Christians and the Kurds, they seemed like they had it right. And I was like, well, why aren't we
Yep.
helping them
Thank
instead
you.
of funding Turkey to come kill the Kurds? But we got the Pesh helping us fight down south. I was like, this makes no fucking sense to me.
Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, no. So
Thank you for bringing that up.
no, you're spot on. No, thanks for just validating my 10 years of going, what the hell was I doing? Okay, I was doing the right
You
thing.
know what's
Yeah.
wild? I could say just as
Yeah.
a civilian, right? As the civilian of the group was actually where I met Chris was at Sirius XM, and you're probably wondering where I'm going with this, but
Mhm.
there were billboards in Times Square, I remember, funded by some Turkish group that were saying on these billboards, learn the truth about like Armenia, and denying the
Yeah.
Armenian genocide, which
Right.
to
'Cause
me,
they didn't
right,
do
as a
anything.
Jew was so highly offensive because I was like, what corporation allowed these billboards to go up? Because could you imagine like a swastika billboard saying learn the
Yeah.
truth about the Holocaust? Like I mean, I have so many Armenian
True.
friends. We've had Armenians on the show like John Dolmayan, and like that I would think that
Yep.
that's equally as offensive to those people. And I was like,
Yep.
why would anyone who owns a skyscraper in New York allow this on a billboard in the middle of Times Square?
Yeah. Yeah. We have the Armenian quarter in Jerusalem because they fled the onslaught that was coming. In fact, it's a very interesting story because there was a prophet. I don't know if you guys know this story, but there was a prophet who prophesied to them of the impending doom that was coming. And so some of them fled to the United States, and that's why you have a huge Armenian community in Los Angeles. And then a good number of them actually fled to Israel and to Jerusalem, back to their Christian like hub and roots of this is where we all, and so they went there, and they actually fortified the Armenian quarter with thicker walls, another
Wow.
layer of walls, so on, because they didn't feel safe there either. You know what I'm saying? Like they really freaked out about this prophecy about this impending doom. And then others, of course, were like, that ain't happening. That's nonsense. We're getting along here. It's all good. And unfortunately, those folks, they saw the prophecy come to fruition. So yeah, it's a very, it's a kind of a crazy story when you think about it, the Armenians and what they've been through. And yeah, it's insulting to me for them to be denied the justice of just like the acknowledgement of what happened to them. It's almost like slavery in
by
America
our government, right?
being-
Like I don't even know if our current
being
government
denied.
acknowledges it, which is the most insane thing I've ever heard.
And people, that bring that up. We're hitting. You see that on social media. Hey, we're supporting Iran. We're giving money to Iran. Yes, Obama has been giving money to Iran. But they missed the Turkey part. Like, wait a second, they're just as responsible. We're giving tons of money to them and weapons, and we're denying weapons to our allies that are fighting against them, which are the Kurds, which really helped us in Iraq more, especially Mosul, where people
and you can't forget Saudi Arabia.
and South on the South. So it's nuts that
Yeah.
it's like I put this on my X account. I said we don't negotiate with terrorists. We just support them, and that's just because they see what we're doing.
Good.
Hey, hope you guys are enjoying this episode. As always, if you're watching on YouTube and not listening, you see the Fort Scott banner in back of Tonto,
Look at me.
as
Here we
every
go.
episode.
There we
Uh,
go.
we really you by and large are a show that's brought to you by Fort Scott Munitions. I mean, they sponsor every single episode, and they're the best ammo out there. If you're a longtime listener, you've heard me talk about the TUI tumble upon impact.
Yep.
But what you haven't heard me talk about until recently, and you haven't heard Chris talk about, is really the range ammo, and that's newer. And you know, I know that you're loving it for shooting at the range.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's anything to save, especially under this current economy, guys. It's hurting everybody out there, but we still like to shoot. We still like to get out there if you're an avid 2A supporter, avid shooter. And spending less on ammo is fantastic, but spending less on great ammo that doesn't hurt your weapon systems like cheap ammo does is even better because you're saving money, not just with the ammo, but you're saving money on costly repairs or replacement of firearms, which can get extremely expensive. So guys, check that new ammo out, get that range ammo that they have. If you're going out and just planking steel or planking paper, if you're coming to a battle line class, highly recommend you come and get that range ammo, and it's lead free.
Yes.
Lead free is important.
When is the next battle line course?
After my hip, I'm fully healed.
That's right. That's right.
I have a private one at the end of September, and then I have one right after, which is at the end of September. That's going to be fun. It's a pistol carbine course, guys. Those are so fun. I love those. But Dakin execs are coming out to do some shooting. It's a private course, so you can't come to that one. But if you are an organization and you have a execs that want to come train, we hold private courses all the time. But you have to use Fort Scott. No, you don't have to, but we want you to
well,
use
that's
Fort
what you're
Scott
going to be
munitions
using
ammo.
when you
That's
shoot
what I'll
there.
be using. Yeah.
And I actually don't say it enough just because it doesn't come up. If you are interested in those courses, tontosgearlocker.com. That's where you'll see all the upcoming courses. But as Chris said, you'll always be shooting with Fort Scott Munitions, and that you can get for wherever you're shooting at fsm.com. Use the promo code BattleLine. You're going to get 15% off your order. They've also got a lot of other great stuff at fsm.com. So go there right now, check it out. And with that, we'll get right back to this episode.
But hey, brother, going in,
yeah.
And you're right on the thugs. When did you see
Yeah.
a transition? And this is a question personally for me, because a buddy of mine, Ray Davis, when he was working in Pakistan, he went to prison because a couple thugs tried to. He was GRS at the time, doing a run, and he raised. You don't mess with Ray. Ray can shoot. Two thugs tried to get him. He came out, bam, bam, right through the front windshield. They're dead. He was stupid to try to take pictures there, and the Pakistani police grabbed him, and he was in prison for I think 6 months until they made negotiations, but to get him out. But do you see that there is a transition, where it's like being a thug is just petty crime, and it's moving up to being a terrorist? I know it's maybe a stupid question. It's just interesting for me on the law enforcement side and the mindset.
Yeah.
Do you see like that's like the gateway? Okay, you're gonna steal something, and then they're being groomed. I love that word. Thank you, millennials, for that word. Groomed to be terrorists, but they start in the petty crime, and that's where the jihadism starts. Or is it just straight? One day I'm waking up and I'm gonna fly a plane into a building. What do you see, man?
First of all, I think it's both. You have guys who are groomed in the terrorist families. So a good example of that is Musab Hassan Youssef, who is the Green Prince, if somebody know, or son of Hamas, right? So Google that, millennials. You'll hear all about what it's like to grow up in a terrorist home. He's grown up in the home of one of the founders of Hamas, and he was groomed to be a terrorist, right? So that's one example of you get groomed. By the way, if you guys hear that's the choppers and planes flying over my head here.
I don't hear anything. I think that Rode mic, as I was saying, is great noise cancellation.
Okay, cool. There's just a Black Hawk that went over my head now.
Actually, I want to hear it. That adds to the to the podcast, right? That's awesome.
So sorry, I'm using such a good mic to cut that out. But in any case, it's just where I live is the fly path for the Air Force here, so it's kind of funny. And then you have your street thugs who are they start with petty crime, and what happens is the imam or the terrorist high ups, if you will, right, will groom them and be like, hey man, F those guys, right? They just, they threw you in jail for some petty, crappy crime, who are they anyways, right? They have no power over us. I can help you fight back, right? You know what I'm saying? So they'll find an incentive and take that bitterness and turn it into, hey, join the team here and we'll help you fight back against the resistance, the resistance against the occupation, the Jewish occupation, right? As they call it. Because we occupy them, right? They don't have freedoms, they don't have rights, they don't have
and the Jewish people haven't been in that area for years. I mean, they just popped there, right?
No, we just came out of we came from Europe.
You just
White colonialist Jews, right? The Ashkenazi Jews. So I actually been fighting people online with this because they call us white colonialists and all this junk. And I'm like, well, like I told you, I'll tell you about white privilege. I grew up with that. Majority of Jews that live here today came from the Arab world because they fled for their lives because there were pogroms.
And that's funny because that's what I was going to say is like the people that we've had on representing Israel are you and Dan Gordon, two white guys. But like, I think people should know that's not what Israel looks like.
Yeah. Well, it's like South Africa. So do you tell a South African who's white that he's actually not African?
No, because most South Africans look like Thor from freaking Chris Hemsworth, and they're like 6 foot. Yeah, they're huge. They're I know you probably.
But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, yeah. No,
because technically Elon Musk is a African American
people.
Yeah.
For example, right? So, but he's not an African because he's white.
I know that, and that's horse shit. That's
so you know what I mean?
Shit.
So for me, I get that. I'm offended by you telling me that I'm a colonialist when I grew up in the Middle East. I'm actually a Middle Eastern. I'm more Arab than you are.
Yeah.
As a white person from North America or Europe. You know what I'm saying? You guys want to get into the whole what do you call it? Indigenousness. Well, I'm indigenous to this land. Yeah, my family, it so happens to be that they're from North America. Yeah, that's true. But this is where I was born and raised.
It's more racist. It's more racist than you have to be a certain color to be called a certain ethnicity. That's even more racist. It's like, hey, you're white, you're racist, you're not. You're not.
Yeah.
Wait a second. So what color do I have to be? So wait, how is that not even more stereotypical and race? It's the most stupid,
so there's a lot of ignorance out there on that. So just to throw that out there too for your listeners, it's nearly 70%. Close to 70% of Israel are ethnically from the Arab world, first of all, and Spain. Okay, clumping that together. If you want the dark-skinned Jews, then we have a small percentage, about 2-3%, maybe closer to 5%. I could be wrong.
Ethiopian, right?
Ethiopians, yep. So we got black Jews, right? We got Asian Jews. We got Jews from all over the world. And what I love about Israel, that's exactly what Israel is. It's a melting pot of many cultures, many ethnicities. It's just that the domineering family that's controlling this region, this country, are Jews, and Jews happen to be a family. And the family isn't all one color, one ethnicity, right? So Jewish is family, and I know it's hard for some people to understand. It's not just an ethnicity. It's not just a religion. It's a family. The family, the sons of Abraham, right? Abraham had spawned children. They had tribes, and those tribes had their own identity, their own culture and everything. But what makes us Jewish is that we're all sons of Abraham, right? Yeah. In my case, I'm, a convert into
Christian,
Judaism.
Yeah.
So
I want to make sure. Yeah, no, I just was going to say,
some people be like, wait, you just said Christian before. And I'm like, and so they understand that's also where
for sure. I want to, and that might be the delay, by the way, if I'm stepping on you, I apologize. I mean, for our audience, we're in two different countries here, but I want to make sure.
Tell them to shut up. They just say, hey, shut the fuck up, man. I'm trying to talk.
I want to make sure we get into October 7th. And
sure.
One thing is, I actually do want to ask you something that may be controversial. And, just speaking with you right now, I feel like you are a straight shooter, and maybe you can't answer this because you are Israeli military. Maybe you can. I always like to cover this, not from a propaganda point of view of Israel's done everything right and the Arab world has done everything wrong. I think there's a lot of valid questions that people have that they get attacked for just for asking. And I've heard this from people who are these questions that I'm going to get into from people who are definitely not anti-Israel, but they're just wondering what the deal is. So I think everybody would agree October 7th, massive security failure. And then what people wonder is Israel is a country that's about the size of New Jersey. How people ask, how in the hell did hundreds of hostages get taken with such a poor response time? And then that leads to some of the conspiracies of, did they allow this to happen? So I don't know if you could answer any of that.
So, right. So there are people out there that are asking this, people like Candace Owens, who are anti-Semites.
But I
and
don't
have
think
to
it's
say
all
that.
people like, I don't think it's all people like that,
No,
truthfully.
no,
I mean,
no,
I
no.
think that's a
Just
valid question. I do.
it's a valid question, but I just need to clarify because you're right. There are people that are asking this, but they're asking it the wrong way. They're asking it the wrong way because they want to demonize Israel. They're just anti-Semites, right? You asked it in a very good way, right? So just to clarify, because a lot of the Jewish listeners, and that's why it's important to understand, because when they're hearing your question, there's a trigger knee-jerk reaction of, okay, really? You want to catch the Jew, right? It's this obsession of anti-Semites of catch the Jew doing wrong, right? And so that aside, it's a very valid question. Did Israel's security systems and responses and military and everything that's involved here, did they fail? And the answer of somebody who is on the ground, the answer is absolutely yes. Mr. Tonto, like for you, when what you experienced in Benghazi, right? Like you guys, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because again, all I know is from what I've seen in the film and some of what I've read in the book. And I'm sure there's lots of classified things you can't talk about or whatever.
Nah, fuck them. I tell whatever I want. I can go to hell.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? There, because this kind of crosses this is teetering on intel sensitivity and stuff like that, and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But the thing is this, that let's put it like this: you have people like me that we will fight to the death to defend our people. There's nothing that's going to allow me to stand down or whatever while my people are being shot up. Just like what you guys did. Exactly. You heard that your brothers were being slaughtered, and there's a duty within you to respond to that, irregardless of what the rules of engagement are, what the political situation is, etc. So on that day of October 7th, we found ourselves as defenders, as highly capable individuals, basically shot in the knees, I guess you could say, if that's a word, by being not given the tools and the okay to do what we needed to do to respond. And I'll explain what I mean. You had some first responders, tier 1 units that were sent to the front lines to intercept these terrorists, but in a very long delay of a response, number one. Then you had people like me who are not tier 1 and are reservists, so we're also not active duty, so it takes time to get us called up, etc. We were ready by noon, for example. My whole unit was ready by noon. If we had weapons, we would have been ready to engage. Instead, and also my unit is not a direct action unit as well, just to throw that out too, so people understand my perspective and my involvement in this war. So we're not meant to come into direct contact with the enemy, is the type of unit I'm in. So there was a lot of debate with my command, my high command, of do we send these guys? Do we not? What part are we playing in this Mayday scenario that we're in? My guys are ready. We're at the bit to engage with the enemy. Half of us want to get in our cars and say, F this. Yeah. I got my gun. I'll go with that. I got my body armor. I got my helmet. I got what I got. So I don't got an M16, okay? Because we don't get issued M16s to our homes. And so fine. So no long rifles. We're taking this. We're going to fight this the hard way, right? Because these guys got AKs, they got RPGs, and I'm getting a feed from all my friends who are in the front lines. Many of us who have friends who are on the front lines, they're in the tier 1 units, in Yamam, in Shaldag, and all these other, Matkal and Shayet and all these special forces units that are getting their butt handed to them. Because also some of those guys are not, as special as they might be, they're not meant to be in that kind of, that's not what they're made for. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's put it like that. They're more, their capabilities are different. I know that my team and everyone in my team are very highly capable individuals. We're all security experts. Like 80% of us, of my team are work actively in security, in executive protection, in other different governmental positions. I mean, we're pipe hitters. Okay. So even though our main objective as a unit is not to directly engage with the enemy, we can, and we know we can. And so does that make sense? So like just pure frustration, anger of like, we're sitting on our butts here, and I have good friends who are calling me and saying, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And it's like everything inside me is saying, like I imagine with you guys, like when you hear the call of your friends, there's nothing worse than being told, stand down, and we're waiting till we get all of our gear and our weapons and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I'm like, screw that, you know, like there are people dying and I don't give a crap about the protocols, right? And here's what happened. If we would have done what some guys did do and did go and become cowboys, right? Right now they're facing charges for killing terrorists. The legal system right now is holding them accountable because they weren't given, you know what I'm saying? Because they went rogue. They didn't get given orders. They didn't show up to their unit.
But doesn't this make you feel that it is a massive failure then on the government? I mean, I guess you can't say that, but that's what it sounds like to me.
It is a massive failure of the government. It's a massive failure, but it's actually, and here's something that you might not hear, but I can tell you without a doubt that there are certain individuals in certain high up positions in this country that have led us into this conflict for political reasons. And that's all I'll say on this.
I believe it. And by the way, this is one of the things that I will say as an outside perspective that I sort of don't like about when people converse about Israel is that I feel like in America, you could ask these questions and you could be very critical of government and people won't say you're not a patriot. And I do sometimes feel like in Israel, it's very much like you got to go along with what they're doing and be on the same page. And that's why I made it clear that I don't think there's anything wrong with asking questions of any government because of knowing someone like Chris and even knowing someone now like you. I don't trust any government. I really don't, you know?
That sounded, you went through the same emotion. It sounded identical. If anybody didn't, you could have said that story and that would have been like, holy shit, that was Benghazi, Libya. I mean, that was exactly really, I got it. I didn't know. Did Candace Owens talk shit about? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's full on now, like denying parts of the Holocaust.
What?
I mean, I just think that there's
that's why I wanted to bring that up.
Oh, it's important to bring up because
people need to make a distinction.
For sure. And I'm not one of these people of which there are that considers everyone who criticizes something an anti-Semite. But there is this rise of people like Kanye West, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, Mel Gibson in the past who
Hodge twins, the Hodge twins,
full on anti-Semites and like make no apologies.
I've called them all out.
Well, okay.
Jake Shields, I've called him out.
Just so I'm again, this shows how much I really pay attention to pop culture in the news. I don't. I really don't.
It's good that you don't.
I mean, but you know, I try, but it's hard to escape it because it's everywhere because it's pop culture in the United States now. But can I ask, what the hell did she? Can somebody tell me what she said? I'm in the dark here. What the fuck?
I can give you the skinny on it, I guess. Or do you want to do that?
I mean, no, I was just going to say, I mean, the most recent one that I've seen that's blowing up on social media right now is that she said, like, the experiments that Dr. Mengele did on Jews in the Holocaust never happened. She was like, why would they take people apart and sew them back together?
For example,
that's stupid. First of all,
why would terrorists rape girls and burn babies? By the way, she called this out too. Excuse me if I'm saying this incorrect. I can't say that because I don't remember for sure. I take that back for the audience because I want to be very accurate with what I'm saying. What I do know she said for sure is that she's criticized Israel's response to this terror attack and saying that the measure that we're using in Gaza is obsessive,
Excessive. Gotcha.
excessive force, and that is it okay for Palestinians to suffer because of these terrorists and because they're holding Jewish hostages? And it's not just Jewish hostages. You have American hostages there too, by the way. That's important for your audience to understand. You have American citizens that are been held hostage, and other citizens of other countries that have been held hostage who came to Israel, who came for this Nova
Music
party.
festival. Yeah.
Music festival. They came from all over the world. And so you have representatives from other countries that have been held hostage, by the way. One of them was one of the victims actually was from Africa too. Any case, because I do a lot of work in Africa, so I'm also more familiar with that. Great people, by the way, in some of these countries that really give you some amazing perspective that is just amazing. So I highly recommend you go check out the other side of the ocean there and learn about the world a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, she said some very, very anti-Semitic things, and which I find very, very troubling, because she used to work for a Jew and worked for a conservative Jewish outlet, right? The Daily Wire. And I used to follow her and support her views, like on COVID and all that. For example, she was very outspoken about that, in the same views that I held, and other different issues in politics, and about the Black culture and the Black Lives Matter and Black victimhood and how that's needs to be done away with in American culture. So I support all of those things. And that's why, to me, that stung the hardest. And the same with the Hodge twins. We say, except for their stupid, humor, but they hit on really real issues that we agree on. And then I hear them talking about the slimy Jews and put their slimy hands on our Candace Owens. And I'm like, what? You just made like what Nazi propagandists would use, speaking about Ben Shapiro, like he's the slimy Jew that just wants money and whatever. And we're like taking Candace's side on this whole issue of her leaving the Daily Wire, but for clear reasons, because she just kept making these really anti-Semitic statements, right? And he's like, look, let's just part way, like, you know what I mean? And it was totally legal, of course. I mean, think about it. It's Ben Shapiro. Like, I think he knows the law a little bit. He's not an idiot. And I think he handled it in a professional way. And if people think otherwise, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it. But leave anti-Semitic slurs and slander out of it. And quit, like you just said, make an objective opinion idea, and have people like, you know what, have me on your show and challenge me on these questions. Like you challenged me with a very challenging question that's hard for me to have to say publicly, yeah, my government failed. And actually, there were certain entities that are being hidden from the government, from the people in Israel. They're being hidden, their identities and so on, that made security infringements. Okay.
Hey,
and
gosh, that sounds welcome to the club. Right? Shit.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, that is
so,
exactly.
Yeah. So people in politics did things and allowed things to happen. I'll give you an example. There's a unit, a very special unit, that was in one of those Blackhawks, and I got to see them leave from our base. And it was like, that was what ate me the hardest. It's like, you see them leave one after another. And I'm like, Mother, I want to be on one of those, just get one of us old guys on there and help these young kids fight. What I'm saying? Because that's the other thing, is a lot of these guys have never been in a war that had to, face off with these terrorists. This is their first war. They're young recruits, young soldiers, etc. And there've been quite a few years since we've had an actual all-out war. And so you have guys like us who have been in war since like the early 90s with years of experience. And you can imagine what that feels like, to see these young kids being led to the slaughter, so to speak, when you could actually assist them on the battlefield, help them. And it just was eating me up. So in any case, so one of those Blackhawks that were sent to respond had been called back mid-flight, said, come back to base. Okay. To this day, you won't hear the name of the individual, the rank that outranked whoever gave the order for them to engage, to disengage. To this day. Okay. It's not going to be publicized. And then again, so this is just one angle of things that failures that happened meaning people let it happen.
Yeah.
But what I think those people what they let happen had no clue of the magnitude of what was about to happen.
So
And I think that was
Go ahead.
their mistake, right? Like that was their failure. I don't think they wanted this level of disaster to happen, right? I think they just assumed some Israelis would be, hurt, and it would make the sitting prime minister Netanyahu look weak because this terrorist attack happened and a breach in, with Gaza or whatever. So I think that was kind of like what they had in mind, and like probably more like a Benghazi, like a small drop in the bucket of what we had.
Yeah.
Instead, it like freaking blew out of control, and it became the worst nightmare for anybody. It became worse than 9/11 in magnitude. So in US numbers, it's more like 50,000+ Americans were killed in one day. Okay.
So
Like that's
so
the magnitude of the
that
impact.
was nefarious. That turnaround, it wasn't a tactically stupid decision. That was a
Nope.
nefarious action to turn them
Yep.
around. That's
Yep.
horseshit, dude.
Yep. And who told me to stand down, right? My guys to stand down.
Yeah.
And my commander, and let me tell you, my commander is no coward, okay? But like the whole reason why my guys are all in the unit that we're in is because my commander is not your typical officer. He's not a, like just obey orders, a yes man guy. He will question the orders. He will turn down missions because of risks to his men, and be like, nope, this is mission failure. Mission success is that we do the mission and everybody comes back alive.
He's
right?
he's an enlisted man's officer, is what we say here in the States.
Yeah.
He's an enlisted man's commander. Yep.
Yeah. So I know he fought to get us to engage, which we did eventually, but it was a day later. It was a day later. We got sent to one of the kibbutzes that was hit. So we did searching for the terrorists, like clearing houses and all that.
Sure.
We what was it? Trying to think. The Nova. So we were at the Nova, providing security for the bomb disposal unit that was because I don't know if people understand, but it wasn't just raping, mutilating, torturing people at the nature party that happened in Nova. What the terrorists did in addition was they booby-trapped bodies. They booby-trapped and put ready-made backpacks of little kids, like a little pink bag, knowing that a soldier like me, a father, would go pick it up, be like, oh, whose little girl's bag is this? Kaboom, kill you. Stuff like that. Real sweet people. So it wasn't just engaging with the terrorists. It also was disarming booby traps that were laid in the wake of all their attacks. In addition to,
do you have any guess of what's going on with the rest of the hostages? I mean, we've seen some of the propaganda videos they've made for Hamas. And I'm just, as an American, I'm wondering, do you think they're mostly still alive? Do you think we're gonna have them all freed? And by the way, like for the 4 that were rescued, I know that you made this clear. Hamas didn't give those to us. Like IDF members died in rescuing those people.
Correct. Actually, it was a Yamam operator, and he was one of the team leaders of his squad, I guess you call it, because there were different teams that like clockwork, right? That engaged on the different buildings because they were held in different buildings simultaneously. Excuse me. They were held in different buildings, so the units had to
it's cohesion. They had to hit it simultaneously. They hit it cohesion, because if you don't, then you may save one, but the other 3, the terrorists got their orders. If one goes down, and then they're going to kill everybody else.
And they were going to do that, actually. They were going to do that, and they almost did kill one of the terrorists. The terrorists almost killed one of the hostages during the hostage rescue. It was very daring, and let me put it like this: like just that alone, that hostage rescue alone, I think this is something that your audience needs to understand. We have a very good relationship, my unit, with Yamam, which is actually a police unit. So Yamam is our SWAT / hostage rescue / most intricate, crazy mission unit. That's the unit that you want to have to carry out some of the craziest, basically suicide missions, that those are your guys. And because other units that are tier 1 will actually turn down missions. They're like, that's too risky. These guys, they're our kind of guys. And that's why my guys get along with the unit. Because
That's
it's like, you
badass.
know, well, yeah, it's like, sure, we'll do it. But again, you know, with taking right calculations and so on, I'm not talking, they're not cowboys, they're not idiots. And that's why I really love these guys, because they're like your thinking operator that know how to think through a mission down to the craziest details. And I can't give you examples because it kind
don't
of
worry
gives
about
away some,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know what I
no,
mean?
no, no, no,
But
you,
but
c- no,
but
no, don't.
some of the stuff that they go into as far as the detail in the thinking through of, if we do this, that will increase the mission success, etc. Things that are just outside the box is what I'll tell you. And it's incredible. And that's what I love, is when I get to get some insights, because of course I'm not privy to everything. A lot of it is super classified and whatnot, even to people like us that know the guys. They're very professional like that, but things that we'll get to hear about amongst ourselves, so to speak, you're like, dang, that was amazing. And so
That's cool. That's cool.
and so this mission, for example, to me is the most daring hostage rescue mission in the history of hostage rescues, period. I highly doubt any unit in the world will carry out a mission like this. Not SAS, not Delta,
Yeah.
not Team 6. And my respect to all those units. They're amazing units. I love guys from all those units, and I know guys from all those units.
Hey,
And they're amazing people.
we all work together. We all
Yeah.
cross trained. I worked with IDF. They came and teach us Young Rangers, man.
Yep,
not
I know.
I'm saying IDF. You know, those guys.
Yeah.
And no, I love those guys. They're badasses, dude. We love them.
They are.
Yeah.
And so this mission, guys, just to give perspective, you have 4 hostages, 3 held in one building, the one girl held separately in the other in another home. And they were held in, by the way, they were held in wealthy Palestinian homes. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So the high upper class, talking about, like we were talking about earlier, who's all involved. You have you have the dodo at the bottom, but you also have the upper class, and they're the ones who are also pushing the propaganda. So one of the homes was a Al Jazeera reporter,
Shocker.
and the father was the imam for the community. Yeah. So talking about grooming and so on. So this is the scenario, and the ones who are holding the hostages as far as securing those compounds is Hamas terrorist operatives. So they're performing the security, and it's not just the homes, but it's the whole freaking neighborhood. Okay.
Yeah.
The whole neighborhood is like terroristville. Yeah. And so they do that on purpose, because they know that we're trying to find our hostages, and that if we do engage, it's like hitting the hornet's nest. They're going to unleash hell on you. And that's exactly what happened. So without getting into too many details of the mission, they went in, they got the hostages. On their way out, 50 terrorists eliminated by the hostage rescue unit itself.
Wow.
Not the security around.
Not the cordon security. Wow.
Nope. So those alone eliminated 50 terrorists while making sure that none of the hostages got hit. Yeah. So that's in the first gun battle, first engagement, 50 dead, doom, keep going, right? Push on, push. Get the heck out of here. Then their vehicle came under heavy fire and got how you call it? Disabled.
Yeah.
So the main vehicle now is disabled. They're stuck. Plan B. And the plan B was, what essentially ended up happening was the beeline via another vehicle to the seashore, and actually right adjacent to the U.S. Floating port disaster. And I did a special on that, by the way, a few weeks ago, I guess. I forget how long ago, where I reported on location. And it just blew my mind, because I was like, literally, I think about a week or 2 after that is when the hostage rescue happened. I'm like, no crap, dude. It happened like right there behind my back. Like that's where they ended up with a Black Hawk that took one of the groups of hostages out. So in that whole engagement, over 1,000 armed terrorists, RPGs, light and heavy gunfire, over 1,000 engaged with the soldiers, with the Imam unit, with the hostage rescue team. And I think it was in the all end of the whole gun battle, over 200, nearly 300 terrorists eliminated. Okay. And then the world media spun it as X amount of civilians were hurt, and how the IDF is horrible, and the Israeli government will go at no ends and no mercy to the Palestinians to carry out a hostage rescue mission when they could have had negotiations. Bull crap. What happened is the whole neighborhood and everybody there are involved in terrorists. The terrorists are terrorists, and the civilians are terrorist enablers, just like the family that were holding hostages in their homes. Maybe they're not Hamas terrorists, like gun, fighters, but they are enabling the terrorists by using their compound, their home, to hold the hostages.
Eating their food, their water. It's just like when we just remember at the beginning where we said support. We need support groups to make fun. Terrorists are the same thing. They need those support groups, those enablers, those sympathizers. What kills me, and figuratively and literally, it's that this has been the same shit that we have seen since 9/11, man. This is what they do, and they've gotten better and better, perfecting their modus operandi, their techniques. Why do you think they melt back into the civilian population? Because they're trying to win the hearts and minds battle now, because they're never going to win the actual battle. They're going to get their asses kicked every fucking time.
Correct.
But this is the battle they want to win. And I remember that report. I listened to it on the radio, actually, when I was driving. And I was like, there's no fucking, come on, dude. There's no they didn't kill those civilians. Those fuckers were melting back and hiding and using these civilians as cover, but also the majority of them were sympathizers. And that's just something from fighting these cockbags. We're going to get, there goes YouTube again, demonetizing us. But literally fight these assholes, and I know how good IDF is, just because I've got the pleasure of working with them and getting trained by them and being around them, and you guys go to the extremes to not have casualties. I know you do.
Yep.
Exactly. That's good to hear, though. That's good to hear.
For sure.
I just wanted
to get back to, because I asked this in the original question. So what do you think is going on with the rest of the hostages, of which there are? I mean, how many? Sorry. No, it's fine. I mean, how many more? I mean, there's dozens, right?
So right now there's I forget how many there is right now, but I think it's about 200, give or take.
Yeah, it was in the hundreds, or and we don't know where they are. That's what I'm wondering. Dead, alive. Like, what would your guess be?
Yeah. So again, sorry to the families that have hostages. It's not that I don't care. First thing I did on my first leave because this is my second rotation of fighting now, and we recruited on the first day. So first thing I did was, friends of mine from Norway came with a diplomatic group and journalists, and they wanted me to help lead them through what happened in the South. And those are kind of tours that I've done on leave, is just take groups and say, so here's where we saw a bunch of dead bodies, see those burnt patches right there in the asphalt. Okay. That's where a car was RPG'd and melted into the black, tar that and so you can point that out, right? Because we were there and we saw the carnage live as it happened. And so I will never forget that first day I got off. Because literally was like, I got off, and then the next morning I'm with this group, and all day long. And then the last thing of the day, we're in Tel Aviv at the hostage center, and I'm looking in the face of the mother of one of the hostages. And it just was eating me up. And I was just like, guys, this sucks, because I want to go back now. I was like, I was like, after hearing her talking about her son and talking about who he is and what a person he is, what he loves and what he likes and all this stuff, talk about the humanity of the person. It's not just a picture, right? A poster somewhere that some of these scumbags are tearing down and whatever. These are human beings, and their mothers, their husbands, their wives, their children. Okay. Their children whose fathers are still held hostage. Okay. In fact, one of these kids was a hostage himself, got released. They kept the father behind. Just so you understand the cruelty of these scumbags, of what they've done to us. And so looking at them and looking at her in the face, and then a few other of the representatives and other families, but I remember her in specific, just it was like, I'm gonna get your boy back, you know. It's like, I'm gonna get your boy back, not me in specific, okay? It's like but it's like, I want to go back and I want to do what my unit does to help in the war effort to get back the hostages now. Like, that was the first thing I wanted to do. And I told the guys too, and they were just, laughing at me in a good way, right? Just like, don't worry, buddy. Like, we'll get our round 2 here pretty soon. Like, you need to rest up. And so I would say that my hopes, and based on some of the intelligence that we have, is that a good number of them are still alive. And the reason why I don't know the numbers is because just now I came back, as you guys know, and this almost didn't happen, or we were trying to also make it happen possibly from base, because I got called up, my orders got moved around, and I just got back from a special course here at the base I was at. And so I haven't been really involved with the numbers lately, but it was in 200 last count that I know, 200 and something. And I would say probably 80% of them are still alive. And I know this is hard for the families to hear this, because they're holding hope that, but again, there's intel that we have where a good number of them have been murdered and killed while in captivity. And so my hope is that those are still alive, and very possibly out of that very same neighborhood where the 4 hostages were released, that very high hopes that they will be released too, because I guarantee you there were hostages there, and they heard the soldiers, they heard the shooting, and I can't imagine their pain and disappointment of like, oh, this is it, only to discover that you see the face of that scumbag that's been torturing you for months come through that door and beat the living crap out of you and take out that rage, because 4 hostages were released now in a gun battle, and now you're going to get stuck there, right? Left behind.
But what's the
and that
reason,
eats me up,
Of course. What's the reason that you think they're keeping them alive? Do you think they'll be able to use this as collateral for some type of, air fingers quote truce or ceasefire?
It's to torture us. It's to torture us because they know about what they know is that our weakness is our humanity, that we have more empathy for their own people than they do for their people. They're willing to sacrifice their people to demonize Israel and to make us look bad in the world view. And they know for sure that our soldiers are more humane and will not kill innocents, right? So when they know that our moral compass is so much different than theirs, they use that as our weakness, so to speak. Like, that's our kryptonite, so to speak, is our moral human values, right? And like you mentioned, Mr. Tanto here about
by the way, it's reminding me of Andrei Arlovsky when you call him Mr. Tanto. Because he always says that.
I learned to be like respectful, if you will, when working in New Mexico selling weapons at Patriot Outdoors. So yeah. So in fact, I think you actually went to a speaking tour, and you were there.
Yeah, a long time ago. They're good group.
I don't know if you remember.
Good people.
That's right. Because I remember he was telling me afterwards, like, "Hey, guess who was here?" And I was like, "Oh."
That's why I'm smiling. Like, that was a long. I mean, that's like right at the beginning when everything was going crazy.
So Clovis, New Mexico, if you ever remember, you were at the Civic Center there.
Yep, and Dave Bray sang the national anthem.
Yep.
Yep.
I
okay,
remember.
cool.
And then I went down to El Paso and ran down, saw some of my familia down at I'm kidding, guys. Even I'm Mexican, but I'm just giving you. But yeah,
I get you.
I went down and spoke in El Paso. But yeah, Clovis. Yeah, it was good. That was a good time, man. Yeah, good people.
So I used to work there, and the guys there taught me how to be more like Southern and.
Oh yeah, that's West Texas, man. I can't. Yeah. You really Clovis is West Texas.
That's right. Oh, they're Texan. They're Texan.
Definitely.
So hence the Texas.
Yeah. Good.
And so I'm officially a Texan right now, in the Dallas area, and that's through my my family that actually lives in Dallas. My brother-in-law's he's a pastor
Oh wow.
in yeah, in Texas. And so okay, so that's the whole plug there with the Texas thing. And I actually have the Texas flag on my body armor. And so, and any case,
This-
so where am I going with this?
I know. Where
Talking
were
about
we
s-
at? Where were we at? Ian, I lost
yeah, let's
track
talk
of
about
thought.
yeah, let's talk about
No,
selling
you were
weapons or
saying
something.
that they're using your humanity,
Oh,
against you.
Thank you.
The future of the hostages and why they're using them. Yeah, that
Yeah.
what's their end state? I mean, I can tell you, but
Holy smokes, I don't know how I got in that rabbit trail. Sorry, guys. Again, my brain is slow here. It's been a long day. And today was like the final test of the course I did and all that stuff, so my brain's all jumble mumbled.
So you passed though, right? You passed.
I did
Congrats. Okay,
by
good.
like the passing. I'm a horrible tester, but I was the best operator as far as operating the deal.
Good.
So they kind of laughed at me. They're like, "Oh, you're like the best operator, but your test was like." So I don't test well, and it sucks. But so yeah, so that's my hopes that they'll be returned. And why do they hold them? Like I said, it's
Yeah.
they know that it eats us alive every time they show a video, time they probe at us of, because I don't know if you've noticed, but all the videos are typically propaganda, because I guess they're in
Oh, yeah.
Hebrew, and I don't know if they have American or English.
Yeah, no, I've seen them, and I know that, like,
with
from what I've seen, I feel like Israel is trying to not let these videos, be viral on
Correct.
the internet, because
So-
they're
Correct.
propaganda videos.
They're
There's-
exactly, they're propaganda videos. Like, we hate the government, and we're calling the government to come to negotiations and trying to make the terrorists look good, basically.
Yeah.
So it's either that or they're gonna make do with their promise of torturing you some more, right? Which now they're saying we're torturing the hostages, and I've seen hundreds of hostages come out of the Gaza Strip. That was part of our mission, actually, was getting them to due process. We didn't torture any of them. Did I want to put a bullet through some of those guys' heads? Yeah, and people hear that, right? And they're going, "What did he just say?" See, he's convicting himself. It's like, well, I'll give you an example. One of the guys that we got the intel of the what's called a field interrogation, right? So there's units that basically gather intel from the hostages that you just captured in war, before they get processed to the next group, which is like, the Secret Service, secret Shabak. Okay, so like your Shabak interrogators, basically government, like CIA style
Yeah.
interrogations. Yeah. And we don't do waterboarding. We don't do all that crap that you guys, see on movies. It's proper, humane interrogations.
Well, you
the
should.
pe-
You guys should. I mean, fuck. I'm just kidding. Ton, you guys can hit me, okay? You can hit.
We have-
Jono said waterboard terrorists.
Yeah.
I'll still sleep like a baby tonight if you hate me for that, guys. So whatever.
That's yeah, but see, like waterboarding, that's easy. That's an easy inflicting of pain and fear and fear of drowning, etc. Right?
Yeah.
But there's ways of interrogation. Like I said, we know how to think outside the box, and I think that's what people don't understand, is that there are ways to interrogate you and put the incentive for you to tell us something without lifting a finger on you, basically. But in any case, that's not at all what I do or have any experience with. So I'm just saying, from the little that I know from that world and from talking to people who have been there, like, it's not like the movies. And but in any case, so we get this guy, he's been field interrogated, and to basically give a baseline to the guys who are going to carry on the interrogation. And and the idea too is to do a quick process, terrorist, not terrorist, right? Because some people that end up under our control were in the wrong place in the wrong time. And then we have to process that, like, because it's like, what were you doing in the middle of a freaking battle zone? Are you like, you want to die? And because they all dress like civilians. I haven't met one terrorist dressed like a terrorist. Okay. Since the beginning of the war, not one. they're all dressed in civilian clothing. So this guy that I wanted to put a bullet through his head from just hearing who the heck he was, it turns out they found a lock of hair in his pocket. And they said, "What's this?" He goes, well, of course he doesn't spill the beans automatic, but eventually he goes, "Well, it was a young girl, Jewish girl that I raped, and I kept this as a memento." And I was like, "Oh, why'd you guys tell me that?" So that night when we did, and it was one of those weird moments where we actually had to do guard duty for a small group of these terrorists because logistically, we weren't able to get them on to the next leg of get the heck out of here. And so we ended up doing an objective that's not our objective, which is doing guard duty for these dirt bags for the whole night. And let me tell you something, like when you're staring at pure evil and you realize that this person did that to this young girl, and okay, it's not rape like some people might think. Yeah. So I'm not going to color it up for y'all, but you guys can fill in the blanks if you don't understand what I'm talking about. And to know that that's what was done to one of these young girls that could be a family member of yours, a relative, what have you, it just eats you up. And I have young kids and I have a girl. Okay. One of my kids is a girl. Had that dude done that to my daughter, I mean, bro, and that's what's going through my mind. Whose daughter was it? It's somebody's daughter, you know? And so there's this pure vengeance that just boils through your veins. And I've never felt anything like this during this war. This is the worst. This is different than other wars. I've had to fight wars. I fought through every war since 2003 that we've had. And I can tell you, it's different when you're fighting Hezbollah in the north, which is usually the wars I've been involved with after serving in Gaza and after we gave away Gaza. And that's it's a different animal. Okay. When your civilians are being fired at and they have shelters and they can get it to safety and whatever, and we engage the bad guys face to face, that's one thing. But when you realize that you have been violated in a very personal way and that you're walking through the streets of your neighborhood that have been violated, children have been violated, children that are crying themselves to sleep, that you hear them crying themselves to sleep because your fob is in freaking his backyard. That's not cool. That is not cool. That is unacceptable to me. And it put me through a mental, how to say, different mental headspace than I've ever been in fighting bad guys. To me, fighting bad guys is kind of easy. I don't know if that makes sense. Mr. Tonto, maybe you can weigh on that better than me. You're, I think, a little bit older and more experienced.
It is. It's.
But you know what I'm saying?
Not, well, they're not.
There's something there. It's a different ball game.
They're not human. I don't care. You can hate me if you want. Terrorists aren't human. It's not. I told them, don't lose any sleep over.
No, these guys are demons.
No,
these guys are demons,
and they are.
These guys are demon possessed, and I've seen demon possessed scumbags face to face, and you can't convince me of otherwise.
Man, you really are going to have to compartmentalize all that extra stuff right now, though, and then you're just going to have to filter. When you get older, when you get old like a fart like me, and you just
you guys are probably around the same age.
I know. I'm a little. I think I'm a little older. How old are you? I'm 53, bro. I'm 53.
So we're 10 years gap.
Yeah, that's
43.
So he's going.
That's not
basically he's going through really a good. 43 to 45 is where it's like perfect because you're still pretty physically fit, right? I mean, you're getting beat up, but you don't have that piss. You don't have that crazy piss and vinegar like those kids flying out having no idea what the fuck's going on. But but you can still move and jump over a wall. So basically, you're at the perfect spot. You got the wisdom, you got the strength, and you got the agility. And you've also got the smartness of when to, take a step back. We don't need to run through this wall right now. Let's figure something else. But
that's what's kept us alive.
It has
till now, actually.
Bro, you're spot on, man. I see it in your face what you're going through. I get it. I do. I've had to deal with children
Yeah.
dying on my watch. One, I made a bad call and a girl died, a little Iraqi
Yeah.
girl that had just playing outside, just happened to be out. So,
Yeah.
you're going to obviously a much greater extent because you're seeing it on I'll be honest, on a much, because it's so close now to you. You know,
Yes.
Iraq, Afghan, big countries. You know, we're
Yeah.
getting cities, but then we're moving around, but it's like you're right in your backyard every day. So, brother, I feel for
Yeah.
you, but I think you're doing great things. And fuck those other sons of bitches who say shit. Who gives a who until they've looked right until Candace Owens stood toe to toe fighting a jihadist, fighting ISIS, Ansar Sharia, fighting the Taliban, fuck
Yeah.
her and what she said. I give two
Yeah.
shits. That kind of disappoints me because I didn't know that had happened,
Yeah.
and I would have felt the same way. That's really
Yeah.
disappointing. I
Yeah.
never
Well,
was
she
a big.
visited Jerusalem and said
Good.
that it's an apartheid, for example. And so here's a funny thing.
Jesus.
Jerusalem is the ultimate picture of coexistence.
Yeah.
Right. So I've done the tour guiding course, by the way. So I don't know if for the audience. Okay. So I'm a history buff, military history, of course, anything to do with security, self-defense, etc. But based off of my professional opinion, Jerusalem is literally the place that we take tourists to show them the holy sites and etc. and all the rich history that's in the city. But then we also point out, look to your right, look to your left. There's a Greek monk. There's a Franciscan. There's a Muslim woman. Clearly, you can see because women usually are the ones that dress more Islamic, right, than the men. And so you have there. Oh, there's a super religious guy. You know, he's got the whole garb deal. There's a religious Jew. Okay, there's an Armenian. There's a et cetera, et cetera. It's like the most diverse city where all these people live together. And here's a fun fact, because a lot of my clients, you know, they're some of the wealthiest people in the world. You know, always want to know, so is it secure? And I say, sir, Jerusalem is more secure than the most safer than the safest city in all the United States. That's
Actually,
a statistical fact.
that's not saying much because our city's kind of dangerous and shit.
But you know what I'm saying?
No,
to
no,
give you
no,
perspective, right?
No, you're right. No, you're right. I get.
Are they ever afraid to walk around in any United States, American city? No, not at all. They don't think twice about it, right? Of course, they got their security detail on a much lower scale than they do when they come to Israel, but they come here and they hire us and the whole deal. And it's just like, listen, it's actually safer than wherever you come from. That's for sure. And I can tell you that.
Yeah,
And those are just statistics, raw facts.
No, I
right?
agree.
Sure. I was
I agree.
telling, yeah, I was telling Doron that I haven't visited since '04, but man, when you go to Jerusalem, like you really do feel you're in the presence of God. The
Yeah.
last thing, I don't know if Chris has anything else. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, you know, with all that we went through here, speaking about what's going on right now, I mean, I think it's fair to say that the ultimate goal would be peace in Israel. I mean,
Yes.
that's anybody could say this. And I think the younger people, like and I've read about this actually, like this is kind of shocking to some people, but younger people in Israel are a little bit more hardline than the older people. And I think part of that is the fact that people who are younger than us, the three of us, don't remember there was a time where Yitzhak Rabin shook hands with Yasser Arafat, and they both acknowledged the state of Palestine, the state of Israel, before Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. And I think, especially young people, they just go, "Oh, these people have been fighting for thousands of years," and they don't realize that there have been times of relative peace. Are we ever going to get back to that?
It's a great question. It's a great question. Personally, I'll put it like this. So I believe that the Word of God is the most clear picture as to what the future holds. Politics, culture, society is continuously changing. God's word is never changing. And everything that's been prophesied in the word of God has come to pass, including the rebirth of the state of Israel. And so my opinion, and I know this is going to rub raw a lot of people, and I don't care. because I typically, when I talk about Israel or politics or whatever, I usually don't bring scripture into the equation, because I know people say, well, I don't believe the Bible. I don't care. Like I just said, the Bible has proven itself to be a reliable story, future telling book. Okay. Storytelling and future telling. So you have stories for learning, for life, for you guys read, was it Sun Tzu and the Art of War? And you learn all that there is to be learned from that. Well, if there's wisdom to be found in Sun Tzu's, the Art of War, we sure is 10 times more in the Word of God. And both in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, okay, the Old Testament prophesied, Daniel and so on, about a end time reality which is known as the time of Jacob's trouble, where Israel is going to be in very serious conflict with its neighbors, to the point of there's going to be no natural means to get out of it. Basically, we reached the dead end, and that God sends the Messiah to deliver us from that dead end. So what I'm saying is the road leads to not peace, the very opposite of peace. I believe that what we saw on October 7th is a small taste of the future onslaught that's being baked up for us by China, Russia, Iran, some of the countries, some of the players, Turkey. Okay. So keep your eye on those countries that I just mentioned, and you'll see what I'm talking about, because you also seen it reflecting in politics, in policies, in actions, and so on. And you're going to see this more and more as time unfolds and reveals. But the scriptures prophesied about it. And so that's what I'm saying is if you read the Bible, you're going to see the pattern, but there's a hope, because the hope is that God comes to deliver the people of Israel, that he has promised this land and this future hope of a kingdom ruled by his Messiah in Jerusalem, and where there's going to be justice. There's going to be executing of God's justice in the earth, and there's going to be basically a reset for the world. And that's the only time you're going to have a utopic, peaceful reality. As long as you have humans that are in control of our own destiny, so to speak, and that we put God out of the equation, you end up with chaos, you end up with war, you end up with horrible things. The more we introduce God into our world, and my suggestion for any country and any world leader and any family, put God first in your family, and you're going to do away with a lot of that chaos, because at the same time, it's in our own hands too. You can eliminate a lot of the bad that could happen if you just don't give in to bad, if that makes sense too. So the way I see it is there's also a better end to a very horrific, so to speak, apocalyptic, reality that's going to unfold one way or other, but less lives can die. So I'll give you an example. So Jesus says that he gives us prophecy, and he's actually, caveating off the Jewish prophets. And so he's basically saying that all these, he's giving a warning, saying all these things are going to happen: wars, rumors of wars, famines, etc. That's all happening, earthquakes, etc. And he says, but pray that it doesn't happen on a Sabbath. And a lot of Christians are like, what? He says, pray that it doesn't happen on a Sabbath. What does that mean? So what Jesus is trying to speak as a Jew to a Jewish audience that most Christians don't really recognize is that he's saying basically, pray that, and he also says, pray that it doesn't happen in winter. Okay. Because he's basically saying it's in our hands to beseech God that these troubling times, that they don't happen in the worst scenario possible. So in summertime, more people can die from heat exposure, this, that, the other, thirst, whatever, right? Winter, they can die from like Napoleon and all these other guys that made the big mistake of leading troops into war in the dead of winter. Yeah. You can end up with a lot more people dead. So depending on the time of season when these things happen, and it doesn't happen on Sabbath. So in other words, so that it doesn't happen on one of our festive days, our rest days, right? Yeah. So basically Jesus is hinting to his audience that you have it within your hands that the prevention of senseless death could be less. But bad
Wow.
things will happen, if that makes sense. And so I believe in what the prophets prophesied. And I believe that what Jesus basically, how would you say, he re-emphasized, right, and hammered home that point. And so I find wisdom in both those in both of those words of wisdom that I think history has yet to unfold and to see that being unfolded. And I'm going to be doing everything in my power to both pray and to, in my actions and my family and so on, to avoid any of that and any of my involvement in that being in the negative, if that makes sense.
No, it does. No, I think we should end with that. I think that was awesome. And you're right. You get back to the good book. This is what we say as Christians. We say here in the States, man, get back and start reading the good books, bring virtue back, and quit relying on laws of man and get back to virtue, and things will go right. But I think there's still more storms coming than that we're going to have to weather. And people will, if you don't read the Bible, you'll find comfort. You will find comfort, and you'll find direction, and every day, man. So no, I don't have anything, Ian, man. I really don't. That's like the best. I think that's the best ending I've ever had on the show. We've ever had on this. My opinion. My opinion.
I appreciate it, man. And
I'm agreeing with you. Man.
And I think you answered some very hard questions. People are going to have different perspectives on it, but especially the fact that you've lived there, the experience that you've had. So Doron Keidar on Instagram and YouTube. And then also the charity you work with, cryforzion.com. And I think that's it, man. I really appreciate you coming on and getting really deep into this with us.
Yeah,
well, it's been a pleasure.
It's been awesome, dude. And be safe. I know that's what we say, but you're going to be as safe as you're supposed to be. But keep doing what you're doing, man. And you'll cry for that shit later. Cry 10 years down the line. I mean, cry when you need to cry. But
yeah,
all that crap that you've seen. I'm talking to somebody who knows. So just you're doing at least from one warrior to another. And I'm like I'm a small warrior. You're a big one, but
no.
but hey, just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. Keep doing what you're doing, and that empathy that we have. Yeah. Well, you see my shirt. Don't have it for them fuckers at all. Okay. Yeah. All right. And tell your buddies to be safe in that. Us old fuckers admire the hell out of them. Please tell them. Okay.
Well, I really appreciate it, and they're gonna appreciate it.
Thanks. Oh, and the young bucks. Tell the young bucks to listen to you. Tell the young bucks shut the hell up. Work your ass off, but listen to their troops, man. Listen to their leaders. All right, buddy. That's it. But I be safe, man. I love you, man. You take care of yourself, okay?
Thank you, sir.
That's all for this episode of Battle Line Podcast. But we're always posting new content on social media. Follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. That's an order. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes up every Tuesday. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Believe in yourself. Face all challenges head on. And as always, never quit.